Prasad garu, namaskaralu.
Good evening, sir. Hope everything is fine at your
All
end.
good, sir. All good, sir. Absolutely.
Look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
So I'll wait for a few minutes and then I'll start. I'll just go mute for a moment and then come back. A very good evening and welcome to all of you to this 22nd webinar in the Wise Views Interactive Webinar Series conducted by ICFAI every Friday. We have one distinguished leader on every Friday at 6:30 p.m. and we are very fortunate to have Mr. Satya Naryanan, the founder and chairman of Career Launcher, that is CL Educate Now. CL Educate Limited is a public organization right now, and we credit Mr. Satya for this phenomenal achievement over the last few years especially. Ladies and gentlemen, please mute your mics, and now I'm going to introduce the guest here. And while we are talking about the guest, please note down if you have any questions and please key them into the chat box and we'll pick up those questions. Now, allow me to share the screen. As I said, we have Mr. Satya Naryanan with us this evening. The agenda will be an initial talk delivered by Mr. Satya from, say, from now to till 7 p.m. roughly, or a little less than that. And then we open the entire session for questions and answers. These questions are picked up at the time of registrations, and some of the additional questions will also be picked up while the conversation is on. I have pleasure introducing Mr. Satya Naryanan. I call him Satya. He's a very, very active, enthusiastic, and friendly, hardworking individual that I know of. Satya is an entrepreneur, teacher, founder, and chairman of CL Educate, one of the very few listed edtech companies in this country, with its presence in Asia, North America, and Africa. The well-known brands such as Career Launcher, which we all of us have known and some of us have studied from, Career Launcher, Indus World Schools were founded by Satya. He is a much sought after advisor on policy and governance in the areas of education and entrepreneurship. Satya is on the MHRD Steering Committee 2019 on National EduTech Policy. He authored and chaired the new education policy for Delhi government in 2014 that has transformed school education, the quality of the school education, and also actually has brought them back to power. He is a government appointee on Electronics and ICT Academy, a IIT Kanpur and MIT project for Cloud University. Satya has been a mentor investor in young startups directly as well as through venture funds for over 2 decades. He is active in cross-border growth mentoring through South Africa Bootcamp, Earnest Z5 USA, and Z5 Wayne Fund in India and Africa. More interestingly, Satya is a published poet in Urdu. Muasir, what it is known by, what the little I know about him, it is his pen name Muasir, and muasir.in will find a lot of his works. Satya currently is working on Sanskrit to Urdu translations of great works by Kalidasa. He converses only in Sanskrit at home and also never misses his 20 minutes of Urdu newspaper reading every day. Satya also serves on the board of Rikta, the largest non-profit organization which is committed to the promotion of Urdu language. Satya has written 3 books on poetry in Urdu and English, Shayad Yahi Se Ho, Dhoond Le Fir Se, Yadon Ki Dukaan. These are the 3 books. Satya has played competitive cricket all the way up to university level. And Satya is an alumnus of St. Stephen's College, New Delhi, and IMD, the place to be. With this introduction, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Satya Naryanan, the leader today, and the guest who is going to talk about the opportunities and challenges for the Indian edupreneurs, especially in the new normal. We are going to learn from the journey of Career Launcher and also the personal professional journey of Mr. Satya himself. Over to you, Mr. Satya. Please start your talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sudha. Thank you so much for such a warm introduction. I cannot be turning pink with embarrassment given the texture of my skin, but I'm very, very delighted and slightly embarrassed with that wholesome, praiseful introduction. I'm very happy to be here, and I am aware that on a Friday evening, if a bunch of 40-50 people are going to show up for a conversation such as this, it tells me that there's a very deep and abiding interest that you have in the domain of education and entrepreneurship. So let me take the first 20 minutes as suggested by Sudhakar on covering 4 aspects of education and entrepreneurship, and I'll cover it in 4 parts. One, maybe a few minutes on the entire Indian education landscape, including education entrepreneurship landscape. Number 2 is delve a little bit deeper on the immediate or the current situation, which has come about due to COVID. And I will try and lace my conversation with little experiences or stories briefly to make it appear, to make them come alive from my own journey as an entrepreneur or journey of CL in India over the last 25 years. And lastly, some examples of what I'm seeing in entrepreneurship, innovations, etc. Let's spend the first couple of minutes on this beautiful, the two words that comprise today's session, which is education and entrepreneurship. If those are the two words that make up today's session, or the lion's share of today's session, it is when we were growing up, we were told, we were fed that, or we grew up. Now I'm 50. In a blink, I was a 24-year-old entrepreneur who started Career Launcher has turned 50, and the amount of gray now that you see in my beard tells you that story. There is a very fun way of saying in North India कि दाढ़ी धूप में तो सफेद नहीं किया ना. So the things that we were fed with or we grew up in, and that when I'm saying we, even people like Sudhakar, Prasad, who belong more to my generation, they would readily admit or agree with what I'm saying. Number one, we were told was that India is not a country of entrepreneurs. India is not a country of entrepreneurs. That was something that was told to us. And the most aspirational people, the brightest of people, would perhaps want to become a clerk in a bank, or a probationary officer, or an IAS, etc. was the milieu. If you get a government job, your life is now set, and you could get married and have kids. That's one very important myth, which I intuitively, as a 22, 23, 24-year-old, I would always question it. But since you're not granted too much of wisdom, you don't have experience, many things that you think which might be different from the way the world thinks, those are either dismissed, or you won't say it outside of your own arguments with friends in the hostel because you're not confident about it. And my view even at that time was, यार जो रिक्शा चला रहा है वो तो entrepreneur है, जो पान की दुकान चला रहा है वो तो entrepreneur है, जो ठेले वाला हर एक माल 1 रुपया करके बेचने को आता था जब हम बच्चे थे हैदराबाद में, वो entrepreneur है. He doesn't have a job. He doesn't know how much he will sell today. His tomorrow's plan depends upon how well he sold today and how happy his customers were today. Take anybody, a barber, a dentist, most of them were in an unsecured environment, and they had to make their tomorrow by dint of their efforts made today with their imagination and skills. That to me is the essence of entrepreneurship. And I'm so delighted that 25 years hence, people now call India as a country of 1 million, or perhaps there will be 1 billion entrepreneurs in the next couple of decades. That's point number one that I would want to make in the opening of today's session. And I would like you to keep this in mind, at the back of your mind, as we go through the conversation. Next comes education. I have no doubt in my mind that each one of us sitting here in this room, speaker, moderator, learner, visitor, curiosity holder, each one of us, we are here by dint of our education. In one lifetime, in one lifetime. And quite literally, my generation, maybe people who are 5-7 years older to me, and to 5-7-10 years younger to me, this generation has seen a billion people country getting built in one single generation, singularly on the fundamentals, the focus, the obsession of only one person in the country. One person has made it happen. Can you guess who the person is? You don't. I know the challenges of interaction. So just put it in the chat box. One person has transformed India from a poor country which would not figure in any list in the top 50, top 100, top 150, to being the third biggest GDP in purchasing power parity in a matter of 75 years of independence. Perhaps a bulk of that work happened in the first 50-60 years of it. We are also doing great work now. Who is that person? And I want to hinge a lot of our conversation on that one person, and then it will make relevant, it will make sense to you, hopefully, as we move forward. PV Narasimha Rao, okay, Dr. Manmohan Singh. Please hear the sentence again. Okay, I said that India has been built on the foundation. The growth story of India is built on the singular theme of education over the last 75 years. And one person has made it happen. Who? Not economy, not reforms, not liberalization. I'm talking something fundamental. Jawaharlal Nehru. It's a tricky question, okay? One person need not be a proper noun. It could be a common noun. Okay, let me put that out. It is the Indian mother. I'm not talking about a person. I'm talking about a role holder. The role holder is the Indian mother, and you and when I say that, and I'm sure each one of you has experienced this, the only escape from poverty, the only escape from the hatchet of below par existence in India could happen only through education. And our country got it very quickly when we began to write our own fate after 1947. And it happened because every single Indian family perhaps knew this. And the vigor, the pace, the singularity of focus with which I have seen in my journey is unbelievable. It is unbelievable. And I'm saying this with much more conviction after traveling to over 100 countries over the last 25 years. It's an amazing thing. If you want to, for a moment, contrast it with any other society, I would say, look at the countries around us. Look at Pakistan. Okay, if you want to look at it at the farthest countries, look at the most developed country. And the agriculture giving 65-70% of the GDP to now education based services, industry, all of those, the way it has gone from being negligible to a 1/3 and likely to move a lot more up is an amazing story. And that's where I would want to end the first two words of this today's conversation, which is education and entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship need not be in education. While we could focus on that in this conversation, a Narayan Murthy, a Zomato success story, a Paytm, anything that you can think of. The CEOs now being in the Fortune 500 companies, 25 to 29 CEOs in the top 100 companies in the world. The number one guy is an Indian who struggled hard with a little bit of a money that his father could put aside to go into an IIT 40 years ago. And he now heads a Google or a Microsoft or a Sun or a Apple or a Coca-Cola. This is story of once in 350 years that we are seeing. And that brings me to the second important theme that I would like to cover within this the macro perspective. I don't know how many of you have read this book called The History of the Nation. You know, the Kalachakra, it says of a country's fortune, it kind of goes around, and you could call it 300 years or 350 years. 1750, the highest GDP, I think 74% of GDP used to happen between China and India of the entire world. Everything else was miscellaneous. After 350 years, now this last year, it was Asian GDP was more than 51% of global GDP. And you now know that this shift has just about begun to happen. The next 100 years is going to be so much about Asia, and so much of it is going to come out of the culture of hard work, honesty, perseverance, education, entrepreneurship, non-entitlement. This is going to come from the Asian culture, which you see, it's not very different. You know, the religions might be different, but the culture is very similar. Whether you see a Singapore or Malaysia or Indonesia or Sri Lanka or India, and the origin of a lot of that culture comes from where we come from. And it actually is a very exciting phase. And as an entrepreneur, I feel very deeply grateful and thankful that we could see that we are in the midst of something which is the once in a 350-year history. And if we could contribute a dot to it, to just the narrative, what we contribute economically is going to be even more negligible than that. I think it's a great thing. My own motivation to start Career Launcher was some vague bunch of these kinds of thought, because after IIM Bangalore, I joined Ranbaxy. I was selling medicines. It was a good company. In that era, I come from a family of my father was a post and telegraph department class 3 officer who started off as a telegraphist. 4 kids. You know, if you manage to get to the other end of the month with his salary not consumed before that, it was a phenomenal month. And I don't want to build a story of romance, but that was the story of India. That would be the case of most of the people here who are 45 plus, 50 plus. On where did they come from? And in that journey, when I wanted to do something which keeps me going for the next 30 years, I found it very disabling, if you will, when I thought that, you know, my first salary after IIM Bangalore, my first salary check was more than the salary of my father after his 27-30 years of working. So all the things that are challenging were done, and they were past. But the meaningfulness of it, the purpose of it, why would I do something to sell medicines, and how long would I do? Those kinds of questions challenged me. Then I looked at my own repertoire of capabilities, or the limited capabilities that I would have, and then something happened. One thing led to the other, and Career Launcher got started. I'll leave more about it if at all there are any questions that comes in the Q&A session. बहरहाल, जैसे उर्दू में कहते हैं ना बहरहाल, और nevertheless, a summary of education entrepreneurship opportunity in India can very simply calculated as, think of a 3% of a $3 trillion GDP country, which is $30 billion, and it's only beginning. You know, when I chaired the education policy writing for the Delhi government, when this new bunch of political entrepreneurs who were our friends from long or younger days, my co-founder and Arvind Kejriwal, they were roommates, hostel mates at IIT Kharagpur. So we called him Kejri. We call him Kejri. So when he set off on the journey and somebody had to write something, I volunteered. I said, मैं लिख देता हूँ, education के बारे में लिखता हूँ, जो भड़ास होना है वो निकाल देंगे, लेकिन हमको ये करना होगा. And I am ardent, and I worked with every single government. Political parties don't make any difference to me. I only look at what is the honesty and commitment this person has for India, for the society, for education. So I don't want to convert this into political debate. I'm currently on the nominations committee of IIT Kanpur, as Sudhakar has mentioned, that is done by the BJP government. I work very closely with the TRS government in Telangana. I was on the schools reforms committee in the earlier Congress government. I think it doesn't matter. I believe that political differentiations is again similar to a product differentiation that they have to do. They have to worry about their future. But if in doing so, if I can be an instrument that anybody can use to improve education, I would give anything unconditionally to anybody. Coming to this policy writing, you will be very surprised. In a GDP of 40,000 crores of state GDP, I wrote down saying that we'll spend 9,500 crores on education, which is almost 24%. And the previous spend was 2,300 crores, which is about already good because being in Delhi, but it was still only 6%. So 6% we took to 24% overnight. And I was very sure, or I hoped and I was sure that it will be spent in a very honest manner, which is happening now in many states. And these people are coming from different political parties. There is always scope for improvement, but the impact has been exceptional. Even the bitterest of critics would tell you that a non-believer in education investment will become a believer. And there is this 20 years of research which has been done by economists who say that the highest ROI for a country in investment in a 30-year period, because countries don't invest to get 5.5% in a year. No, a country has to invest for one generation. The highest ROI comes when the country invests in education. And that's the conviction leadership should have in policy, governance, and political parties, to be able to do it and then wait. And when you have the patience for 30 years, it pays off in 5 years itself, because the action begins to happen. So closing the first chapter, we are in a great situation. Of course, we have a lot of bad news, but we are so self-critical most of the time that we don't see the half glass full, or we don't celebrate it well enough. But I'll sum that up by saying 3% of 3 trillion. So you're talking about 10 billion there. That's the government spend. And in India, one very interesting statistics that all of you must know as observers of macro in a country or a society is, while China and US, the private spend of education is about 15%, 15% of the government spend. That figure for India is 45%, which means if If India as a country ends up spending 10 billion in education, another 10 billion is being spent by the Indian parents to give that additional thing. It could be a tuitions for a child, it could be buying books, it could be a Bharatanatyam class. You can pick the way you want. But when I say education, I mean it's a human development investment made by the country or by a family at a macro or a micro level. So $20 billion growing at about 7 to 8%. We're talking about 30 billion happening in this decade on a per year basis by the time we reach the end of the decade. It's a humongous opportunity. Let me now come to the business opportunities that throws up as a result of it. And before I do that, let me cover the pandemic thing quickly. It doesn't need any expertise to say this. All kids were at home, teachers were home. Anything anybody wanted to do had to be done online, which means the entire journey of customer discovery, customer engagement, nurturing the conversation, converting that into a sales, taking the money, enabling the fulfillment journey for the customer or the learner, teaching, assessments, benchmarking, and outcome delivery. Everything had to be done online. And this came in with such vigor and abruptness that in the market, I saw two kinds of responses, like it happens in every shock. There is one group who are truly entrepreneurial and who want to be, when I say entrepreneurial, it basically is a personal attribute. I don't want to make it too technical, but बंदा कहता है कि यार ये हुआ है, इसके साथ जूझना पड़ेगा. Let me get on with life. Let me accept this reality, not fight this reality, and let me see how best I can convert this into an opportunity. Which means transitioning to a cloud, getting some new tools, trying out Zoom, and so on. One bunch of people started doing within 24, 48, 72, 100 hours of pandemic hitting us. Those people today are in a very, very good place because whatever mistakes they had to make, they made in the early phase of the pandemic. At the same time, I also have seen, like you would have seen, the other bunch who invariably are the wise people. And wise people rarely can be entrepreneurs. Okay, like what Steve Jobs had said, stay hungry, stay foolish if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, or if you want to be an entrepreneur at all. So these wise people were arguing, नहीं हो सकता है, अरे हफ्ते में चला जाएगा pandemic, अरे देश को थोड़ी रोक लेंगे. Those kinds of inertia led perspectives, and you are so anchored in those that you take life for granted and you don't think that any shock can come your way. And that proved quite a death knell for a large percentage of entrepreneurs in the world that I walk around in, not limited to education alone. It could be entertainment, events, food, restaurants, everything. And it's not that everybody died. Everybody struggled, I agree. But the struggle from a narrative or a mindset that यार अगर मुझको दिक्कत हो रही है तो हर एक को दिक्कत होगी. So let me see what can I be delta X better than the X that everybody has been reduced to due to pandemic. And those people have gone on to build some new assets, properties, tools, platforms. And when the world is coming back, it is coming back with a little bit of a new normal, where some behaviors aren't going to come back to the old self. Some are going to remain new. Many which are needed, because life is a lot about society, people, meeting, emotions, and even inspiration in the case of education. So the omni-channel model I see coming back, or earlier it used to be offline hai ya online hai. Now it cannot be only offline or only online. So when Amazon acquires offline retailing companies in the US or in India, they are also telling you loudly something about how they see the future. These two have to coexist. Similarly, when a Byju's acquires an Akash, they are seeing that even in education, because the solidity, the robustness of offline face-to-face touch is very important, just as online, scalable, technology-driven, asset-light, that approach also is important. And how do you make these two work in tandem is is a brilliant uh, new truth, new normal, where entrepreneurs are going to find themselves in every business. If you ask me, education is just an example, food delivery is an example, marriage management is an example, anything, you can take anything in any area. The last part, the future that I see, that some examples of innovation, maybe I've already covered it, as in a salt and pepper embedded way in the last 15-20 minutes. But the beauty of future, the beauty of entrepreneurship is that nobody can arrogate wisdom to himself. Look at this fascinating thing. IBM could not do Microsoft. Microsoft could not do Google. Google could not do Facebook. Facebook could not do WhatsApp. None of them could do Amazon. Each time it was a new 20-year-old, 23-year-old, 25-year-old, because he's wired in a different world. And that's the beauty of it. So if anything entrepreneurship teaches us, or life should teach us as we grow in experience, is to stay grounded, feet firmly planted on the ground, and if any, increase your humility as you gather more experience. Otherwise, it could be the biggest handicap. And you could say, and I've experienced it myself as a 24-year-old, where people would think that even in spite of their best intentions for me, they would think that यार ये आजकल के youngsters ना, ये बड़े सरफिरे होते हैं, उनको कुछ आइडिया आता है, वो सोचते हैं कि वो दुनिया बदल देंगे. But a youngster isn't saying that. He's merely asking you to be appreciative of his thought. So I guard myself against making that mistake. The 24-year-old scoffed back at the same guy 7 years later in his own heart, और felt grateful कि इन्होंने वो कहा था 8 साल पहले, आज देखो हम क्या देख रहे हैं, जब आप जॉब इंटरव्यू कर रहे हैं और उन्हीं का इंटरव्यू कर रहे हैं. Okay, so life is a great leveler. The underlying thing of all of these is not money, in my view, and that's one very beautiful thing. If you ask me about the Indian entrepreneurship, it's there's this great saying in the US, where they say, it's about the it's about the economy stupid, it's about the money stupid. No, society is not economy. Society is much larger. Society, culture, people, all of these are much larger. Economy is an inevitable aspect of it. If you get your society wrong in trying to chase economy, it will not last long. So it is, and organically, this culture that we live in, I'm not a person who's jingoistic. I don't call this Indian by the geopolitical boundaries of the modern nation state theory, but there is always There is always something जो उस जमीन का होता है, वहां पर आपको वो पाया जाता है. And that is the last sentence I would like to close this my monologue. I'm very sorry about it, long one, is that, you know, there is this very fashionable term called payback. It's never a payback. It's a stupid, myopic concept. Entrepreneurship is invest forward, pay forward. Ask the entrepreneur who's become successful in life and ask him about the first 5 years of his life when the world did not know him. The most successful entrepreneur. It was like growing a bagicha, aam ka garden. Okay, cultivating the soil, manures, soil your hands, nurture it. It's like nurturing your child. Your child, when you're nurturing your child, you don't nurture your child so that he grows big and gives you 12% of his salary as royalty to you as a parent. Calling entrepreneurship an economic effort is as tasteless as that. Saying that, okay, Satya has 3 children and is giving so much of love and affection to them because when they grow 21, after they graduate from an IIT or an IIM or a Harvard, they're going to become billionaires, and then they're going to give 12% of the money to the parent Satya. No, my Javani would have gone. I'm rearing a child because I want to make my Javani meaningful for this moment, this here and now. Okay. Thank you so much. I will pause there and then hand it back to you, sirs, Prasad and Sudhakar sir, for the questions in the Q&A part.
Great, Satya. That's been a wonderful session. Amazing stories that you have captured, as ever, as always, that you do in your own unique, very interesting style. I cannot thank you enough for doing this, but let me capture what has happened in the last 20-25 minutes. Without a deck, without a PPT, if it can be so interesting, I'm sure what it would be to listen to you in person when there is things that are going to go into new normal, and then we have opportunities of talking to you in person across the table. It will be always interesting. And I tell everyone around the screen that, ladies and gentlemen, Satya is a great speaker, apart from being a great entrepreneur and many other greats. He would connect to the topic and help you understand so easily. My own experience of traveling with Satya to US and the short time that we spent at, I think, Stanford and EdCast and a few other stops, I think it was so much fun. In spite of being very busy, head being so heavy, with the burden of responsibilities which I can think of, he manages to lighten the situation and at the same time rise up to the occasion, go to the pulpit and speak so much of sense. That's amazing. I must thank you, Satya, for doing this. And the journey of India itself, which you equated to the singular focus that the Indian mother has in shaping this country into what it is an amazing truth well told. Your own journey of starting Career Launcher soon after graduating from IMD and realizing the opportunities that this country can offer you and offer most of us is yet another important point. The humble beginnings of parents, the family, and the contrast that you have provided is very inspirational. Yes, we don't want to bring any romance to the story, but they are facts. Somebody whose roots are in Palakkad and whose growth has been in Hyderabad and Delhi and Mumbai and probably Bangalore and every other country in the world. Somebody who has played cricket, somebody who has written and spoken Urdu with so much of passion and elan, and of course English and Telugu and many other languages that you can. You have spoken the language of an entrepreneur today in your talk. The talk said, nobody can arrogate oneself with all the wisdom. Every 23-year-old or every 25-year-old can produce the next big thing, and that's what we have been witnessing. We are very fortunate to have these talks. We are very fortunate to have you with us on the 22nd webinar that we are holding here. On behalf of ICFAI की तरफ से हम आपका तहे दिल से इस्तकबाल करते हैं इस महफिल वेबिनार में शामिल होने के लिए. With this little bit of Urdu which I picked up from inspiration, from Satya's inspiration, I also welcome Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor Mahendra Reddy Garu and the leadership team that has joined subsequently. I noticed only now. Welcome, sir. Welcome to the entire session. The story has just begun. There's a long session to go. What I will now do is I request Professor R. Prasad to join and begin the moderation. A little bit of introduction with about Professor R. Prasad. Professor R. Prasad is an alumnus of IIT Bombay and IIM Calcutta. He was an entrepreneur himself. His total experience is about 3 decades into entrepreneurship, academics, corporate world, all put together. He's authored, edited many books, presented many articles. He's a thorough academician. He has handled large responsibilities at ICFAI. And some of the mind-bogglingly big assignments were handled by Professor Prasad, which all of you know. Professor Prasad is currently the director of academic wing at ICFAI Group, and he's a professor and mentor for the newly launched online MBA program. He has architected the entire program himself. It's a fully online MBA program. We are very happy to share with you that Professor R. Prasad is now going to begin the moderation of this Q&A session. Welcome, Professor Prasad. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sudhakar. That was a very wonderful introduction, Satya, if I may call you that.
Please.
Yeah. What distinguished it from all the other presentations that we have had till now is that there was a lot of inspiration and emotion which was packaged along with the structure. And that little bit of unstructured along with the structure made the difference. I think it was an unstructured presentation, but it still had structure. And I think that reflects the kind of world that we lived in. If we try to make everything structured, it doesn't work. So that dose of inspiration and emotion combined with the structure is what punches things through. And I think that's where knowledge gets transformed into learning. Otherwise, it remains dry and it is not as interesting.
Right.
So thank you for that. We also had our founder who also traversed education, who was an entrepreneur himself, Professor N.J. Yashasvi.
Yes.
And it takes a huge amount of courage, energy, commitment to stay the course. And I think you have stayed the course from 1995. And a lot of interesting ventures that you have got into, maybe some you have got out of. So here, the first question that I'm getting into it is with respect to your, how you chose to become an entrepreneur. A little bit of specifics. And then how did you continue to get into new ventures? Each venture evolved. You made different types of decisions. How do you reflect on this entrepreneurial journey? That is the first question.
Yeah, thanks, Prasad Garu. There is a pregnant pause there as a response to your question, because it almost sounds, extremely glamorous and romantic, because it's a little bit of more of a success story than a failure story. But I must be very, very candid. I must be very honest that I know maybe 50 entrepreneurs, friends. Not all have succeeded, but my venture into it was no different from theirs. It is fairly uncelebrated, seen as unthought of, rash, rebellious, brainless, by one set of people who are all wise. But my reality is, my truth was that, if as a 24-year-old, if selling a product, कहते ना ये दिल नहीं लगता था जो काम कर रहा था. तो when you there is no English word, appropriate word for that. दिल नहीं लगता था. You can say my heart wasn't there, but that's too left brain to say it. So I looked at the CEO of my company. My CEO of my company, Ranbaxy, at the time was Mr. Brar, and he was an 77 batch FMS. So which I said that, okay, let's, and these are all very random 24-year-olds thoughts. Okay, so kindly forgive it for its lack of wisdom. But I thought that, yeah, if I'm super successful, I will become that in another 20 years. I thought that's very uninspiring. इतनी बोरियत नहीं चाहिए. So why don't I do the next easy thing for me? Why CEO? Why not the chairman? मैं कल कार्ड पर छापूंगा, सत्या फाउंडर एंड चेयरमैन, मेरी कंपनी चालू होगी. Okay, now that is okay for me to be rebellious, but if there is no meaning, if there is no purpose, if there are no skills, entrepreneurship won't succeed. Which is why what we find is, there is .com era, everybody ran towards .com. The first .com bubble, 99% of them run away. Next comes the real estate boom. Everybody runs to real estate, thinks that, oh boss, I can become that guy. The third is the stock market exchange. Everybody thinks he can become Charlie Munger. Then there is a stock market crash, he runs away. I think, so fortunately, the inside voice told me, कि boss, तू मुझको ये बात बता, तेरी औकात क्या है? This is not the right forum for me to say, but the question was, what the F can you do which nobody else can do better than you? If that answer to that question isn't very, very telling, if money is not what you're looking for, what is it that you want at the end of the first quarter, first month, first year? And from various directions, education, teaching. I think these words were coming. But I was too lazy to do a PhD. I went to an IIM because I'm a clueless guy. Anybody who goes to do management, I tell them, because I use the pejorative, saying that जो जिंदगी में clueless होता है, वो MBA करता है, क्योंकि उसको मालूम नहीं क्या करना है. मैंने वही किया था. My career was falling off a precipice in cricket. I would have become a clerk in Indian Airlines or a CWC. वो नहीं बनना था. So I prepared for CAT. Because somebody told me, if you go to an IIM or a B school, you will get a job in 2 years and your life is set. I said, ये तो अच्छा मामला है. So MBA happened, got a job. The job was very meaningless. Then I asked, what do I do in my life? The answer kept telling, तू PhD कर नहीं सकता. Academic bent तेरा mind नहीं है, लेकिन तू पढ़ाना चाहता है. So which means I can't become a professor like you, Prasad. PhD did and you went to IIT Madras, IIM, and then become PhD. I said, बस मैं नहीं कर सकता. I can't publish research papers. But I love teaching. My grandfather was a school teacher. My father always found half an excuse to go to Telegraph Training Institute. I think some of these very vague bunch of thoughts, all of these came together to form a little bit of a garland, which fortunately has survived for these 2.5 decades. Back to you, sir.
Thank you, Satya. I think, there is quite a bit of reflection and also quite a bit of resonance from what you're saying. First is that, it is not, one of the major points that I could see is that you need a purpose. You need a purpose, and that is extremely important to get in and to stay the course.
Yeah.
If you're able to connect that purpose to what you're doing and you remain there beyond the money, the designation, the power, etc. I think that's one point that I could get from what you have mentioned. And the other is stay true to yourself, the inner voice, no, the true north, where you knew what you wanted to do and what you didn't want to do. And then I think, you build the whole thing around that. So this is what I would take away from what you said. The next question, Satya, is about, there's a famous quote that the breakfast of champions is not cereal, it is the opposition. And you have seen many ups, and I'm sure you have seen many downs as well. Because, there is no up without a down. And there are no such ventures where it always remains up. So how did Satya, the person, so when you read up, about you, there is the polyglot, there are the languages, then there is the food that has been mentioned about. So how does the person is central to all this, particularly in an entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur.
Right.
How did the person sustain the entrepreneur during these times? How did you see the experience, understand, and come up with steps in such challenges? What are the lessons for other potential entrepreneurs in this?
Sure. I think I hope I'm reasonably accurate when I say that my journey is of maybe upwards of 70% mistakes. It's not 7%, it is 70%, which means I always keep telling young entrepreneurs who come in saying that, if instead of 70% mistakes, if I made 30%, I would have become Bill Gates. Okay. Or meaning, unfortunately, the size of it in economic market cap, etc., we end up counting in our world where we come from as trained. But the point that I'm bringing out, Prasad, is that it is a series of initiatives, steps. Somebody tags the outcome as a success or a failure, that his or her outlook to that particular initiative. It's not a tag that I would attach. Unfortunately, we belong to a world where you want easy codification. So, is it a successful entrepreneur or a failed entrepreneur? Is it a good story or a bad story? Hence, we try and reduce it to plus minus or 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. Other than that, my journey has been many mistakes, and so small, very small mistakes, and they have stayed with me. And a customer has pointed out to me. I'll give you an example, very simple example, and that has stayed with me. And every time people come to me, they hear me pointing this out, which is, it may sound extremely unwise of me, but let me go ahead and say it. My first program was called Personality Development Program, Prasad, PDP. I had two versions of it. One version was called PDP Planned, which means if you have taken CAT as an exam, that's where I started my journey as a teacher entrepreneur. If you have taken CAT as an exam, based on my mock CAT score, I can tell you that you're going to get a call from an IIM because your mock scores are showing like this and my data is showing me this. And you join early, and because I'm going to teach you for 120 days, I'm going to charge you 1,200 rupees. Okay. And then when you get a call, because not all of them are going to fall for the trap of mine, if I use a not so good term as a sales guy, what is the sales trap, sales hook that you have? If they don't catch that and you end up having a call, but I have nurtured our conversations, when you get a call, you're always going to look at me, and then I'm likely to be a first port of choice. So while I was hoping for a sale, I was happy enough to build that brand goodwill and wait for the sale to happen in 4 months' time. Okay. Now the pricing, I'm bringing the attention to small thing. My planned program was 1,200 rupees and my crash program was 750 rupees in 1995. Okay. And then in a very casual conversation, there was a friend of mine who was an uncelebrated, he was not an IIM like me. He was a sub broker in the Bombay Stock Exchange, working out of one small gully in Karol Bagh in Delhi. He said, Satya, तेरा क्रैश का प्राइस प्लान से ज्यादा नहीं होना चाहिए. मैंने कहा नहीं यार, प्लान में मैं 100 घंटे पढ़ाता हूँ, क्रैश में मैं सिर्फ 30 घंटे पढ़ाता हूँ. उसने कहा कि नहीं, that is not the perspective that I have. This guy is taking a risk. He may or may not get a call. This guy has got a call. So he's going to is likely to pay more. So if it is 1200, then this could be 2000. Or if this is 1200 and 750, then it should be 750 and 1200. Sounds very funny. Sounds like a very simple thing, but I did make this mistake. So if this is an illustration of pricing, which did not kill me, but opened a bunch of eyes in my head, like that, Prasad, I can imagine dozens of them. Some cost me a lot, some cost me nothing. But fortunately, the good thing is in entrepreneurship, one mistake doesn't kill you. No mistake kills you. Let me say that no mistake kills you, as long as it is not the mistake of the Satyam kinds. You should not lose your credibility. The day you lose your credibility, the day people stop trusting you, that's the only way for an end to your entrepreneurial venture. Everything else, pricing, technology, strategy, tactics, product, all of these gives you time to recover. Apple has made that mistake. Amazon has made it. Google has made it. Microsoft has made it. I have made it. I come in a very illustrious league. But that is how I integrate journey as a series of events, initiatives that you preside. 20, 30, 40, 50% of them successful. If they are 20%, you are going to be very successful. 50% of them, you will be in the BSE top 50 index.
Thank you, Satya. I think, what I would understand from that is that there are a series of steps. Whether you call it a success or a failure is the mindset of the person who's looking at it. But if you're able to learn from those series of steps and build upon them as a sequence without losing your credibility, I think that's a major lesson that I could get from this. So this learning is central. Of course, making mistakes is there. Somebody who doesn't make mistakes, and there's no enterprise there. And I think there is a balance between the mistakes and not a mistake or a take.
Correct.
So I think that's what I could get, and again there is a consonance there. I think even in what has happened personally with me, the entrepreneurial stint has built on to how one is able to do things when you get into the organization, and how you are able to build on one and further one onto the other. So I think that there is a lot of material in that series of steps, and the learning that you get in series of steps. And not looking at it as how others look at it and get stereotyped or biased into it.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Over the decades, you have observed a number of entrepreneurs and ventures. Now, if you need to, for the purpose of the audience, and a lot of them are from the management stream, and many of them are probably interested in entrepreneurship. So what do you see as the critical success factors, skills and mindsets, and particularly if you take education and entrepreneurship? Are teachers better suited to be an edupreneur? If so, how?
So could you repeat the last sentence, Prasad? Are teachers?
Are teachers better suited to be edupreneurs? That means entrepreneurs in education. If so, how do they get there?
Okay. So let me take the first part first. See, the interesting thing that has happened in the last decade and a half, and more so in the recent 5-7 years, and perhaps this happens every generation when there is a technology-led disruption. Okay, it questions and dismantles all the previously stacked up wisdom and the super Brahmanism also. There was an era where an IIT, IIM, Harvard, BCG consultant was the highest echelon of Brahminical wisdom. He was a rock star. Okay, that has its place. But then came the era, and that one works in a steady state where there is a certain way in which the world economy, the world order is running. And forgive me for this zooming in and zooming out from 30 feet to 30,000 feet, and I hope I'm not causing confusion. But when the next era of technological disruption started, beginning with internet in 2000, and mobile and data and appification and data science and the analytics, today the CEO cannot be a guy without a hands-on skill. You could be arguably, I'm not necessarily saying successful people were like that. For instance, Narayan Murthy could tell Nandan, take a walk, I'll code this tonight and show you tomorrow. Perhaps Bill Gates could do that. Perhaps Steve Jobs could teach people a little bit about design and technology. Perhaps it was true in every generation, but it got just super magnified because newer technologies are getting discovered, which means if you have a genius in certain area, when I say genius, a problem solving idea, an entrepreneurial wisdom, insight, but you cannot say now I am going to collect 7 karigars and they will build it for me. Your moral right to lead the team comes from, out of the 6 skills that are needed to build this Taj Mahal called new entrepreneurial success story, which one do you do? Are you a good carpenter? Are you a good architect? Are you a good marble carver? You have to be something to be building the Taj Mahal. You can't be a Shah Jahan. If you're a Shah Jahan, means you're Sunil Mittal's son, you can get the valuation of the first $1 billion because father clicks a few buttons. But the first time when as they say, oont pahad ke niche aaya, the first crisis, and men and boys will get separated out. So the one word answer to your question before I pick the second one, Prasad, I would say is, boss, what skill do you hold? ज्ञान मत दो, पीटर ड्रकर को मत सुनाओ, स्ट्रेटजी मत बताओ, मैं तुमको दूंगा, तुम क्या नाई का काम कर सकते हो, कारपेंटर का काम कर सकते हो, डिजाइन का काम कर सकते हो, टीच कर सकते हो, etc. That is very important. Okay, and you take any new generation entrepreneur, whether it is a Sanjeev Bikhchandani or Paytm, VSS, Zomato, these or myself, the number 1, number 2, number 3 in the company, थोड़ा ड्रामा करेगा तो उसको मैं बोल सकता हूँ, ये लोग बोल सकते हैं बस तू उठ के बाहर जा, मैं देख लूंगा. I think that gives a tremendous amount of fortitude and courage to lead the team and take the ship steering, because in the harshest of climates, everybody looks towards the captain and say, will you hold the steering now? I've tried hard, I'm VP sales, but things aren't working. You should be able to say, don't worry, I'll come for the sales call with you. So sales, I'm not calling as non-skill. It's a very important skill. BD is an important skill. Product design is an important skill. Coding is an important skill. Core finance could be a very important skill. You know, for a Aavas Finance kind of an NBFC, you have to be a good financial wizard. You know, Kotak's success is so much given to Uday Kotak's entire abilities as a financial whiz. Okay. To close that up with the point that you made about will teachers make better edtech entrepreneurs? Need not be. Very similar to will the best batsman make the best coach? Need not be. Will a bowler make a coach? Need not be. You could be a second, third, fourth level player. So teaching, if it is akin to playing, entrepreneurship is about, if you know that and you are it, you know, like Ravi Shastri, when he stands and talks to our team, he can speak from a location of a lot of strength, because he's in the 1983 World Cup. He was a champion of champions in 1985. Or similarly, a Ricky Ponting when he's coaching, or a Rahul Dravid. There is strength, but Mike Brearley was known as the best manager of Ian Botham, etc. So I think anybody could be successful, but if you want to be super successful, if you have the ability to interface with the learner, you will be a little bit more um, advantageous, because you are directly interfacing with your end customer, and that is magical. That's extremely magical in that sense.
Thank you. I think there is a central point which is coming out, and what I understand it is that today the person who's the founder, or even if he's the co-founder, needs to be an essential part of the product and customer experience value chain.
Absolutely.
And if he's got that, then he's right in the center of things, and he's in a position to take the risk, as well as understand what's happening in the other parts of the value chain, be able to evolve and align based on that. This is what I could see as one key takeaway which you have mentioned in response to the question. And as far as the teacher learn part goes, I think you emphasized on the learning part and not so much the teacher part. And if the learning part is connected to the customer and therefore connected to the first question as well. Thank you. The last question in this cluster is connected to, you have a number of ventures that you opened up in the CL portfolio. And what kind of exercise do you do before you identify opportunities for such ventures?
One important thing is to look at the subsector, and does it have tailwinds? Tailwinds could be in the form of policy, changing consumer behavior, or a technology breakthrough, or some of those things. The second is our own inventory of capabilities, or resources, which could include essentially people and money. Okay, people, because with money you can still go and fetch people, but you need a protagonist, a owner who kinds of goes out on a limb to make that a success. Is the mother of that new child in the at home, and that's very important. And it's not necessary that all these ventures would or should succeed. It is also not necessary that all of these have to be built from scratch, like we have learned in our management education, or in our journey as learners of business building, that it could be, the option could be between a buy versus a build. At places you may choose to venture into that and buy it. For instance, like I mentioned in my introductory part, if offline business is very important for Byju's as an edtech company, would I spend 40 years trying to build an Akash kind of a brand, or can I pay up $1 billion and get that to work for me from tomorrow? Those kinds of choices are strategic choices that we end up always looking at, and it's not an open and shut case that we will build it from scratch. So outside in check boxes, inside out resources check boxes, and the third is what is the right way to go about it. Those are the three ways of going around adding new businesses.
Thank you, Satya. I think the context in which you want to get into the venture, and you mentioned about the tailwinds there and the subsector, and examining that a bit more carefully, and then whether you've got entrepreneurs inside, and whether they're willing to take ownership and give the energy that you would have given it in case you have started it. That kind of the internal resource, and then the make or buy in case the resources are available or can.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we come to the end of the first cluster. I'd hand it out back to Professor Sudhakar Rao for the next cluster.
Yeah, it's going great. I'm not surprised at all. And I'm going to now start the next cluster of questions, and this is going to be on education, edutech, new normal, and things like that. And we can change the gears here, we can move a little faster. Satya, according to you, in the new normal, what are the edupreneurial avenues, including the edtech, including the startups, across primary, secondary, and higher education?
Actually, every single sub segment in education, Sudhakar, I, I I see, because there are the landscape is changing very fast. There are lots of newer things that are happening, and especially in India, many of these things are really very early sunrise segments. So whether you take tutoring, teaching, publishing, uh, entrance exam preparation, or even newer areas. For example, take the story of White Hat Junior success. The boy took it from idea to M&A quickly in a period of a few years' time. And who would have thought that coding for teenagers or sub-teenagers will grow so fast? Some people would have scoffed at that boy's idea 5 years ago, whereas he sold it for 300 million and moved on to his next venture. So the opportunities are infinite. Uh, at the same time, it is very important to not underestimate the challenge of scaling. That is true in every education, every field, and even more in education. Because if there is the most hard measured B2C product or service, see, you buy a soap or you buy a shirt, and if it turns out to be bad, you can chuck the shirt of 2,000 rupees and that's the end of the story. Whereas you cannot do it about your child's career. As a parent, you will not forgive. And one such bad word, you can make genuine mistake, but one such bad thing could harm somebody for a year of his or her career. So it's a very, very harsh, measured B2C business, but technology led now is a hygiene is critical, but it not necessarily be limited only to the online part. It could be a good mix, like I mentioned, but scaling is very, very hard, and it is getting prohibitively expensive. I've built the India-wide known brand, practically spending no dollar on brand building. In the sense, we didn't have to spend 220 crores on an IPL to become a known brand, but it's that expensive today. That's the reason why the large, big funded stages are necessary if you have that kind of an ambition to go across the country.
Great. The fact that it is very, very hard measured, and the challenges of scaling up in education will actually make all the edupreneurs think about it thoroughly before they actually get into it and get into the mode of scaling up. Very, very pertinent, very pertinent responses that you have given there, Satya. Thank you. The second question is the rural part of it. India is largely rural and also to a large extent backward. Now, what in your view, the type of education ventures which would make a decent impact on the rural and the backward areas, according to you?
Anything that alters the orbit of the life of a youngster will be valued there even more than in the cities, Sudhakar, as you can imagine. Because a city kid or a privileged kid, if you will, privileged not necessarily from an economic sense point of view, but even from an access to opportunities point of view, a privileged kid has greater awareness. From that point of view, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities and towns and the 700 plus districts in our country, each is a gold mine for an education entrepreneurship. There is no doubt about it. And what will work? Can you show me, help me, enable me to cross that particular hurdle, which alters my life by giving me a job or by taking me to the next campus of higher aspiration? To put it simply, those are the two filters that you have to use, and that's how it is used. Uh, again, building a contrast. It is measured very, very strongly. Think of it like this, Sudhakar: a boy or a girl in a Begusarai in Bihar, or in Allagadda in Andhra, that boy would struggle to pay or will somehow extract 3,000 rupees to pay for a bank clerk's exam preparation money, which means that 3,000 rupees he is hoping when he puts his sweat and blood and effort into it, can he get him crack into that, the clerk's exam in Andhra Bank, and he can go to a Karnool to become a clerk in an Andhra Bank. I think that's a life-changing thing for him. So 3,000 rupees might be a small amount, but it's life-changing for him and it's a big amount for him. And you as an entrepreneur on the other side of it, think of the number of 3,000 rupees tickets you have to sell to be able to build a 1 crore company. And that's what makes it challenging. That's what makes it extremely exciting.
Amazing. I think with the one single example you have mentioned, the number of 3,000 tickets that you can sell to become a 1 crore company across the billions of opportunities that you have in this country, lying in the small towns and cities, whether it is Begusarai or Karnool or Allagadda as you. I mean, your knowledge of the territory is amazing, and therefore you're very successful. But then that's a very, very important point that you mentioned, Satya. Thank you. How do we assess? I'm taking this question. After this, I'll come to a little more serious question. But this is a very. How do you assess the teaching learning outcomes in edutech sector?
It's very simple, very harsh, whether we like it or not, Sudhakar. Take the success. Like if I take my flagship, our preparation to get into an IIM or an IIT or a law school. Out of the 200,000 people who take CAT as an exam, about 800 of them are going to get IIM Ahmedabad call letters. Okay, and if you take all the IIMs put together, let's take that figure. Let's say it's 5,000. 5,000 out of 2 lakhs, which means in the story that you are trying to build, 98% of your failure is guaranteed. and anybody who comes, he would come with an aspiration that, can I get into an IIM? That's my dream. Or can I get into the tier 2 institutions? You take tier 2, another 8,000 can go. So 10,000, 12,000 out of 200,000, that's a 5%. So 95% will be failures. So what the 95% speak about you actually builds your business. What 1% speak about you builds your advertising campaign. But advertising campaigns don't build businesses, which means the honesty with which you are able to counsel a child, saying that, boss, तू अपना mock CAT का score देख, तेरा IIM में नहीं होगा, you give it your best shot. These are the ways to go about it. But please do apply to these 6 colleges also. They are very good. And Satya Nadella is not an IITian. He's went from Manipal. So life is not about just the thappa that you get when you're a 21-year-old. For some reason, you might fail. The brightest of kids could have a bad 2 hours and you may not get into an IIT or an IIM or an NLU. So I think that's where the heart of the matter lies, where you are able to look at this as a mentoring and orbit changing input that you're giving, but you're going to be measured by people saying, what is the success story, number 1. But more importantly, you're going to be measured by your neighbor saying, हाँ मेरा नहीं हुआ था, लेकिन boss, I loved the teaching. I was so inspired. I'm still in touch with them. Do you want their phone number? So access and mentoring that they receive is a hugely valuable thing in the customer's assessment and appraisal of you as far as education is concerned.
That is brilliant at one end, Satya, and also disrupting at the other. While you said that access and mentoring will actually make these inevitably 95% of the people talking about your business and that building your business on one hand, sometimes it is disrupting because you are hitting at the flagship that you're working on also. Life is not just about IIMs and all. But at the beginning of the session, we say that all of you will get into IIMs. At the beginning, we all say in our institutions that you're all going to get into IIMs, prepare full steam. Let's try our best. On the other end, you will say that life is not just about IIMs, but yes, open up tremendous inventory of opportunities to the young kids who have been working, toiling very hard with their money, energy, and time and attention. I think that's a very very big thought that you have actually touched upon. One observation I would like to raise and then hand it over to Professor Prasad. That is, it has come from one of the members of the audience. Education in India, especially for the masses, is at best a shot at the lottery, characterized by an inadequacy of a borrowed structure and the failure on part of Indians to acquire certain critical normative goals and lacking a general conception of education. The field is open for rich pickings by quacks and charlatans selling snake oil. Edupreneurs, what a scream. I mean, this is the observation. You can respond to this quickly and then we will get into the next cluster of questions. Satya.
I would respectfully acknowledge that as a valuable critical observation of the downsides of our society as well, and thankfully many of these charlatans get caught sooner or later, thankfully. So I won't waste my breath worrying too much about it, but the point made is valid. We must acknowledge that it's there not just in education, it's there in every field, and it is also there in every society, howsoever poor or a developing or a developed society. It goes with different sophistications and sophistry, but yes, I would respectfully acknowledge that yes, that is a valid observation.
Fantastic, Satya. I think you've handled that extremely well, and thank you very much for responding to that observation as well. And Professor Prasad, please start the next cluster of questions. Over to you.
Thank you, Professor Sudhakar Rao. The point that you've made about putting a goal on the aspiration for people who may not make it to the IIMs, putting a reasonable goal, that is okay. If it's not this, these are the things that you should aim for. I think that's a very valid point, because every person differs, and therefore I think it's part of the the value that the person gets, and they also know. It's not as if they don't know. And therefore, it's very very realistic and very very optimizing for both the institution as well as the student to show them how to take the next step that they can do. And it resonates very much with this aim for the stars and get to the moon kind of thing, because aspiration finally is the driver of all this. If that energy is not there, they won't be coming to the class or interacting or even reaching for the moon. So I think that's a very very valuable input for all those who are there in education, because all students in the class are not going to be the same. Even in our business school, some of them will get the best of jobs and some of them will be struggling. Yes.
Professor Prasad, I'm going to flip this on to you now. 1% of your successful students are going to build your ad campaign.
Yeah.
But ad campaigns do not build your businesses.
Yes.
How do you reflect on this from the point of your own stint at entrepreneurship to your own stint within ICFAI even now? Professor Prasad.
Let me put it this way. Learning is a journey where you need to do value addition. So whether it was the earlier Edupreneur stint or what we are doing in ICFAI, if you are able to communicate that to the student, like we had this initiative where we were in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Okay, so Professor NJY's slogan always was, take the average guy and make him above average. You are adding value. If you're taking the best guy and then he's remaining best, he's not going to put any much of credit to you. Maybe he'll put on the brand, but not much on you as a teacher. So I think this average and above average is kind of the median of it. And all those who are in education, I mean, except the best of institutions who get the best, I think the remaining part of what has been spoken about as the 20 billion, 40 billion, I think they are in the middle. That's the huge thing. And many of them are right at the bottom. So if you're able to flip that up, I think that's where the whole thinking in the design needs to be. What we are trying to do in terms of right now, I'll speak about the venture that we are doing, the initiative that we are doing, is that if you've got a working executive, it's important to understand why he's doing this online again. He's not going to become the CEO overnight. So right from the selection process where you have his profile and you have the opportunity to ask him, it's important to zero in on his aspiration. Why is he doing this? Because that's the energy which will help you to put a goal for him, a very contextualized goal for him, and then see whether your learning processes are following towards that goal. So in this case, in the case of what Satya said, it was an IIM, and then the another B school which is there. So here it is in terms of his goal, and as far as his goal goes, and if you're moving the milestone towards that particular goal, and you're doing your servicing is very important. Mentoring is part of servicing in education. Small queries that there is, I think if that service delivery, that mentoring delivery is on track, he will remember you, because a lot of people don't bother to do that. I think you're mute.
Yeah. I was muted by your great points and I didn't realize that the mic was off. No, it's very important. Mentoring is part of servicing, and that's what we have to focus on, the brass tacks, and keep doing it day after day, week after week, year after year. Fantastic. Over to your set of questions, Professor Prasad. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this cluster is basically about the pandemic, online education, and technology interventions. We are at about 803, so I'll try to make it as crisp as possible. The first is, you had a lot of challenges during the pandemic, and to a certain extent it hit all ventures. So how did you use that as an opportunity to reshape the business, remodel the business, and do things that you were not doing before?
It was another of those episodes where one had to pad up and go ahead of Yuvraj Singh for batting, as it happened in Wankhede in 2011, Prasad. I think because some things you will have to do and show, or just do, and then people will learn. Don't take too much of thing about telling and learning and all, because even you don't know. And it's at times more frustrating to be a co-driver or a navigator, because you have to take responsibility if the ship collides with an iceberg, and that's the time. So the same thing I did in pandemic, because I didn't know what to make out of this. So, and in my head, as a person, I've always been the guy who says that, let me assume the worst, and I'm going to prepare for the worst, and anything better, I'm going to be better. So we went to work from home 7 days before Modi announced lockdown. And we shut down the centers, we went online, every single thing. So and changing the architecture, mindset, all of those were not easy, because it's very easy for me to pivot sitting in my seat, because I'm only thinking, whereas the business is hardwired in 200 locations physically. How does he receive a bunch of new set of instructions and behave very differently? But fortunately, we could do that, and we ended up doing very, very well. But the first 100 days were extremely challenging. I announced a new project. It just grew organically. It was not too much of strategizing because there was nothing to strategize. You had to be at the battlefield and do it. And it turned out to be a project which acquired a name of its own called unification. So we called it as unification project, where the digital and the offline, we had to unify it in terms of team, roles, people, reporting, changing processes, all of that. But fortunately, it turned out well, and it looks like it will do it will stand in good stead as we come out of it, hopefully without the third wave uh, being as damaging as the second one or the first one.
Thank you, Satya. I think that was very candid. And I think it also gels in with this narrative you gave about taking steps. It's not necessary that everything is very clear when you take the step, but after you take the step, you can certainly build on it. And then finally, you did have something which worked out well.
Yeah.
Thank you. So there is this one question from the audience. I mean, this is going slightly into a tangent.
Sure.
China has cracked down on edutechs, and this has created a lot of scrambling among parents and students.
Right.
There's a disruption there.
Yeah.
What is your take on this?
You see, I think there is a whole new world out there to be covered in response to that question. But in short, China is dealing with its own needs and its own demons in its head as a country, as a political system, and so on. And perhaps we are going to be fairly out of syllabus to go into that. But the point is valid. They have cracked down on a whole range of entrepreneurial activities. EdTech is just one among them. The chemical industry is suffering, the pharmaceutical industry is gone through, the metals, they have done a whole lot of things. So they have cracked down on a very broad cross sections of the society, because they are trying to fundamentally change something about the Chinese way of doing economics for the next 20, 30, 50 years. There is some hypothesis for which their principal entrepreneur has taken charge of their ship. But what it has caused at the next levels are a whole lot of challenges. The implications of that are that the global funds, the global companies, which made China as their manufacturing unit, whether you are sitting in Japan or US or any place, they now are scared to death about what's going to happen to us. And the responses have been such that what the eminent statistician Rosling says about India overtaking China in terms of GDP as an $84 trillion GDP in 2047, this could be one such tectonic shift, because a lot of them are moving to Indonesia or Malaysia or India as companies. Japanese government is doling out incentives for over 2,000 Japanese companies to move out of China, as all of us know. India has announced, and if you look at the stock market, the chemicals companies are going through the roof. Deepak Nitrite, alkyl amines, Balaji amines, these companies, because the anti-dumping has been put into place, the PLIs have been given by the government of India for a bunch of industries, and it's going to change the India's position as a manufacturing hub in the world. And in EdTech, for exactly the same reasons, a whole lot of money that was sitting in TAL Education, New Horizons, which were a $100 million company a decade ago, and they were worth $5 billion before this crackdown, they lost 20, 30, 40, 60% of their market caps overnight. What happens to that company? One of our investors on our cap table is a Singapore-based fund. They had exposure to TAL Education. They had to get out at 25 cents, which means 100 rupee investment. They had to sell it distress at 25 paisa, took that money out. Now, where will he put that money? He's putting it in India. Where does he put in education? He has to put in companies such as CL. CL educate, or if a Baiju comes in. So it's a great opportunity. Indian entrepreneurs must look at it, must grab it with both hands, but don't worry about it. You know, if you are great, if you're doing good job, Lakshmi will chase the Saraswati. You could be the Saraswati, you could be the IP guy in chemicals or in steel, in metals or in education, tech or wherever, doesn't matter. The money will chase you. Make sure that you're robust and solid. And this Chinese concussions that we are seeing will benefit India or could benefit India massively if the signals that I am seeing are there to go by.
That's very inspiring. I think that take is also, it's a very entrepreneurial take of where the opportunity is and how India can benefit from that. And that leads me on to the next question, which is also from the chat box. And is this all, if last year they said EdTech had the largest investments in startups. And if this continues and aided by the China, kind of trigger, will this produce a bubble? This is one of the concerns of somebody who's put it into the chat box. EdTech. How much of a bubble is it? How much of value of it will continue?
See, the overheating and of a stock or a company or a sector, and then undervaluing of a sector is part of the cycle of any economy. And successful entrepreneurs and businesses, they go through both of these cycles with equanimity. It's a good case study to discuss for an armchair expert and for a Harsha Bhogle to talk about Virat Kohli. But Virat Kohli has to continue to play. So the overheating is a good argument, is the right argument. And if I say it perhaps would sound like sour grapes. But as a spokesperson for education, what I would say is that, good, be aware that there is overheating, be aware that expectations are high, but be glad that the capital is coming. This is what, if you ask me, I have been a proponent of for 25 years, saying that education is not getting the investment attention that it deserves. A shampoo company gets it. It is hugely romanticized. A shirt making company gets it, a shoe making company gets it, and an education company doesn't get it. So in my view, it's overheating is true, very, very true. There is not any bit of exaggeration, even by my own judgment. It will all settle down. It happened in 2001, it happened in 2008, it happened in 2014, it will again happen in 2023. The cooling down. Okay, but that doesn't matter. You still have to continue and build the core business. See, the price multiple from 80 can come down to 40, but at 40 you still have to be good. And if you're 20, you have to go to 40. So whether it's a listed company or unlisted, these things will keep going through. I'm not unduly worried about it. I'm very happy that large Indian tech companies are coming. This is happening. But my own long-term view here, Prasad, is that the way IT has 5 large caps coming out of India and another 7 to 10 mid caps coming out of India and another dozen small caps in India, all are solving the world's IT problems with different differentiations and specializations and characteristics. In a edtech, that is my belief. A decade ago, that was my belief. That's my belief now. Now there are some evidence-led stories, whether it's a Simply Learn as a story, CL as a story, or a Baiju as a story, or a TAL education in China is a story, or a VIP Kid is a story. These are all good stories. And 4 or 5 such companies in India will be here 10 years from now solving the edtech problems, education problems of the world.
I think again that is very inspiring, and from where the question came and from where it has been taken, I think in essence what you're saying is that education is a strategic sector for the country, And so what if more money comes into it? It will only do good, even if temporarily it gets overheated. Many more things will get done, and then you may end up also solving the problems of the globe.
Yeah,
And that is
absolutely.
wonderful. And I think that's a very good way of flipping the question and communicating that. I think I have one last question. It's again from the chat box. It also came in the earlier queries. Um, uh, what is the impact of artificial intelligence and machine learning on your operations in CF? Technologies like that.
Very fundamental, very invisible, but hugely impacting. Let me illustrate with a very simple example. Earlier, I would ask the student, "Oh, kaisa tu?"
I think it's gone mute.
Time of data was available. I could look at a dashboard, benchmark him against his peers. Today, today you can go to the Career Launcher website. For the CAT 2021, which is still 4 months away, you can take a test and it will tell you your percentile that you will get on the day of CAT. CAT has not happened. It is only DI, data science led, AI led, entire lot of analytics from the past taken in, and we are wrong at the second decimal. If I tell you that you will get 98.23, you might get 98.26, and you can be very annoyed with me that you are wrong by 0.03%. But that's the kind of stuff. And as a teacher, it has made my job infinitely easier and hugely put premium to my time. I can look at the, it's like a cardiologist without the radiologist in the earlier era. How do I tell your heart's condition? Now you get me the radiology report. I can put it up and then see and tell you, do this, do this, do this, and you're bang on the ball. So I can tell you, you don't attempt questions in arithmetic. You're making a lot of mistakes there. Why are you spending so much time in modern maths? There are only 4 questions in CAT. Don't waste time, because your report tells me that you wasted 11 minutes, attempted 3, got all 3 wrong. What's wrong with you? Those kinds of very super premium on teachers' time and ultra personalization to the final data points. We know every child, how much time has he spent on an item, and which one did he miss, and which is the question the topper attempted and you didn't reach there in the question paper. These are gold dust. That's the power of AI. And just that's one example. There are a whole lot of other things that we can always talk about.
Excellent. I think you have illustrated it, and there's a lot of takeaway for formal institutions like us there. And in our language, in online MBA, we call it the learner's journey map. And it's there, where he has to go like a Google map, and whether you're going through the direct route or whether you're going left, right, and how do you have to navigate back. I think you're spot on. Thanks a lot for that. I think we come to the end of this cluster. Back to Professor Rao.
Thank you. This is shaping up as a very, very riveting conversation. And Satya, I must confess that we have taken more time than I have asked you for.
I'm more worried, and I'm constantly doing gymnastics to keep my mobile phone going. As I said, I've logged in from my cousin's home where I'd come, and it has come from 100% to 15%. So if you're seeing me moving a little up and down, it is to check the charger. Go on, Sudhakar.
Fair enough. I think we have come to the last cluster, short and sweet. Not necessarily sweet, but definitely short. Satya, I'll just have these short answer questions for you. There's one perspective that rigorous training for cracking admissions procedures led to less than suitable candidates gaining entry into prestigious academic institutions. Is it true?
I think I want to be respectful about these questions, because every question has a truth in it. At the same time, every question also at times ends up doing less justice to the other truth also. If you are such a genius institution, why can't you build a question paper that cannot be so-called, if you think it is cheating? But the point is not that. You see, CAT, if you ask me, among the best of exams in the world, CAT is a very smart exam. CAT is a very, very smart exam. Okay. I would go to the extent of saying that we shouldn't have IIT JEE in the manner in which we are having. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want a child to have a 7th level of physics understanding? You need to test the scientific temperament. For example, CAT tests the decision making temperament. That's all. Logical reasoning, visual reasoning, quantitative ability. As a CEO of a company, I spend 90% of my numbers time doing number systems, arithmetic, basic algebra, basic arithmetic, not even algebra. Forget about Fibonacci series and advanced mathematics. Computers can do it now. So, an IIT JEE, I would agree to the question, the questioner's point, that I would agree by saying that if I'm a very self-respecting IIT, I'm going to build a question paper where you cannot cheat me, you cannot beat me. I'm smart enough. And let me now flip the question to go to the other side. If I have to take a side, I will take the side of a student. I will take the side of a 16-year-old hapless student coming from a middle class family where the parents barely put some money to make the children win. So if tomorrow, if IIT JEE guys or CAT guys say that they will do a 100-meter dash, will he not go for coaching? I will stop teaching arithmetic and algebra. I will give him a 100-meter dash. I will go and hire a Usain Bolt and say, in India, for some strange reason, the policymakers think that 100-meter dash is equal to scientific temperament. If they become great engineers like M. Visvesvaraya, Mr. Usain Bolt come and coach our Indian students because they want to get to IIT, because I'll guarantee things. So I am saying that don't use one measure for yourself and take away the right of the other person, a youngster, to beat you at your game. Because the reality is there are only 1000 seats in IIT Bombay. It guarantees a passport to success. So you give whatever it is, I'm going to beat, because I am this indefatigable Indian youngster who will tell, boss, jo bhi tu karega na, usko main tod dega. Tu karke to dikha.
Great. I think that embodies the spirit of a young Indian on one hand, and also it has brought the best out of you, Satya. That question was very good, and very, very beautifully you have quelled. Why should we not game it, or why should we not beat it? Not even gaming it. Why should we not beat it? I mean, that's the spirit of young 16-year-old kid in this country preparing for all these examinations and prestigious institutions. Thank you. The next question, and probably the last one. How this new education policy or national education policy 2020 will have its impact on institutions like yours, like Career Launcher or entrance coaching centers?
Our industry is built on the bedrock of aspiration, Sudha. Policies, fortunately, are becoming more and more authored by next generation, younger generations, and they are looking at these from a perspective of nation building, economy building, GDP growth, youngsters, entrepreneurship, capital creation. I think the mindset has evolved hugely from the Nehruvian era to the modern eras, right through PV Narasimha Rao all the way to this particular thing. And you can see it in different countries also, whether it is a Orissa or a Telangana or a Kerala or a Punjab. Okay, and different political parties are doing it. NEP in particular, the one critique of NEP that I have is that a 800-page document is not easy to implement. Okay, and an 8-bullet document is always easier to implement. So there is nothing that is not there it is like our Upanishads. Everything that you want, you can find it, and everything that you want to interpret, you can interpret it. So a communist guy can interpret it is bad, a capitalist also can interpret it is bad, or both of them can interpret it is good. Okay, but what I'm seeing on the ground, actually, if you ask me, I would like it to progress faster, but what I'm seeing is good. What I'm seeing, I'm not too disappointed, and I understand the challenges of running a country of 130 crore people, and I say it with a lot of limitations that I have in running a 1,000-people company. It's not easy to run. Uh, but I think fundamentals are changing. Big rocks are moving, and now some of these rocks that are in motion, whether it pertains to research or innovation or entrepreneurship, they are all moving well, and I'm optimistic, Sudhakar.
Great. I think the message to us is the fundamentals are fine, things are changing, they're moving in the right direction. In spite of the numerous challenges, difficulties, and limitations that we all have, we should be optimistic about what we are going to be. I think that's the message from you, and that's one of the best that I can take away from this session. Thank you very much, Satya. And then you mentioned that somebody can interpret this in some way and someone else can interpret a few things in some other way. So the last one for the road is this, and this is Urdu, and I have borrowed. इश्रते खतरा है दरिया में फना हो जाना, इश्रते खतरा है दरिया में फना हो जाना, दर्द का हद से गुजर जाना है दवा हो जाना. Please decipher this for us.
क्या बात है? Yeah, Katra. You know, the destiny of a droplet. The destiny of a droplet is the ocean, and the eventuality of a pain that it becomes panacea in itself. It becomes medicine. Phenomenal. It's excellent.
Amazing. I think you have made it very simple for all of us to understand. That was very nice. We always struggle to understand these words, and when it is put together so finely, so nicely, it's such a great pleasure. I'm sure you're doing that every single day when you're reading Urdu for at least 20 minutes, or every time you put your pen to paper to write in Urdu manuscript, Urdu script. I fondly remember some of the words that you have explained to me when we met last. Those are all awesome stuff. Thank you very much. And one thing, तुमसे तो खैर घड़ी भर की मुलाकात रही, तुमसे तो खैर घड़ी भर की मुलाकात रही, लोग सदियों की रफाकत को बुला देते हैं. That's the essence of meeting you, Satya, every time in person and even today for this session. Thank you very, very much. And I must tell you that what triggered your dil nahi lagta hai kaam karne mein, that is when you were doing your job, selling something, you said dil nahi lagta tha. From there, I think you have moved on to defining the opportunities, identifying several opportunities, one like your once in a 350-year-old history that is in the making, and then you stuck to it, and then you said it is just pay forward and not pay back as an entrepreneur. And some of the skills that you have mandated for a CEO is that one of the critical success factors to running a ship or running the organization should be possessed by the CEO or the leader. Otherwise, in times of difficulty, who they will look at? They have to look at you. And in the worst case, if you have to kick someone out, without you also I can run. That moral courage and moral fortitude the leader would have. I think these are amazing lessons, but you have also told us to be humble. You have also told us to be grounded. Every time you grow, every time you fall, maintain the equanimity to the extent possible and work for what can alter the orbit changing measures for the average kid in this country. I think that's a pretty interesting and intense message that we take away from today's discussion. Thank you very much, Satya. I can't thank you enough. So I keep saying these things, but brilliant. I really enjoyed, and you have been a long-standing batsman playing such a long innings not out. I know your battery in your phone would fail, but you would not, and you'll keep on handling these questions. There are many questions, but we'll put a stop to this, and we enjoy with these responses that you have given us. We will go over this video recording. We will write the summaries and we'll share with all our friends and well-wishers how beautifully you have explained and shared your perspectives of these immense possibilities that are lying not just in Indian education sector, but all the other sectors also. Like a great batsman, you have handled it extremely well and faced all the balls with great ease. So thank you very much. हम आपके बहुत शुक्रगुजार हैं जो आपने ये कीमती वक्त निकाल के हमारे लिए इस वेबिनार को 4 चांद लगा दिया है. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us, Satya. On behalf of everyone, including the Vice Chancellor and other senior members who are on the screen, and all my colleagues, we thank you and your entire team which has supported me in reaching out to you and sharing certain inputs and trying to understand everything about you in the background. I think to all of them out there, we thank wholeheartedly. And on behalf of Professor Prasad also, I would like to thank you for your patience, time, attention, and energy for us today. Thank you very much, Satya.
Thank you very much, Sudhakar. I must also thank you all. Both of you have been exceptional moderators. You made it come out better than it would have on its own. And I would also fail if I did not acknowledge that I noted Dr. Mahindra Reddy sir has come. I recall my meeting with him very, very fondly, maybe a decade ago at your campus outside of Hyderabad. Sir, I hope you are keeping a great health and your energy continues to be as it was a decade and a half ago when we met. Thank you very much, Sudhakar. Thank you very much, Prasad. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we will see you again next Friday at the same time, 6:30 p.m. with yet another leader, Mr. Ravi Tangirala, who is the head of Mass Mutual. He's going to speak in this webinar and share his inputs on his domain of insurance and annuities industry, both in India as well as across the world, and what are the trends that we need to watch out for and learn. So we will see you at 6:30 p.m. on Friday, September 24th. Till then, do take care. And the pandemic is not over. Maintain your social distancing and wear your mask and don't invite the third wave. Let's hope that there is none. So with that, I wish you all the best. Have a very good evening and take good care of yourself. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Satya.